don't eat salad. It's not good for you. Would you ever think that you would hear that from a doctor? Would not be the first time that I have told someone not to eat salad. We have particular paradigms about our food and about what we think is good for us. And sometimes it's actually not true. Even something as what we might think is as steadfast as salad and vegetables being good for you. Welcome to Mental Fortress Mondays. I'm Dr. Cheryl Carthouse, naturopathic doctor, and here on Mental Fortress Mondays, we explore the who, what, where, when, why, and how of mindfulness-based practices, and other things that impact our mind. And today, we're talking about paradigms of food and around how we function with food and the different types of influences that we have there. So back to salad. If salad wasn't good for you, and you heard this from someone, would you believe them? And what if there's a good explanation around how salad could potentially be damaging for you? In TCM, that's traditional Chinese medicine, we have a number of different ways of looking at the body. And when the body is struggling in a particular way, we want to support it with something else. So the 5 elements looks at all of the different 5 elements, and there's organ systems that are associated to that. And for the spleen and stomach in Chinese medicine, that has a lot to do with how we digest our food. It likes warmth. So no cold things, nothing with ice in it. Ice cream has extra sugar in it and it's cold. It's one of the worst things that we can do for our spleen if your spleen is struggling. And now this is your spleen in Chinese medicine. In traditional Chinese medicine, spleen and your stomach. So if we have these ideas that vegetables are good, that salad is good, and we want to actually try and shift that paradigm, what do you think would be really difficult to do for that? We want to change that thought process around what we need to do in order to heal well. And often it's education. It's trying to understand why something might be not good for you at a particular time of day or year or in your health, in your own particular health journey. And we want our paradigms to function well for us. And often they're rooted in things that we have experienced, in things that we have grown up with, and in social influences, cultural for sure. We don't eat things here in Canada that we might eat in other places, like locusts and bugs and worms and all those other types of things. But in a culture where that's normal or where it's socially acceptable to do that, it's not a problem. And even within your smaller circles, if there's something that's socially acceptable with those people, you're more likely going to do something like that. So if everyone's doing some crazy diet, then it seems very socially acceptable. And we often will make these choices based on all of those types of things, our upbringing, our likes, our dislikes, our needing to be accepted, and also our self-love. Because often we end up eating foods that can self-sabotage. Now, it's been my experience through a recent drastic diet change that when we experience an emotion, we experience it first in our body. And when we experience that in our body, we then want to we feel it like on our body. We then want to make our entire internal environment, everything around in our body, actually match that emotion that we're feeling. And if you've experienced this, you'll know what I'm talking about. If it sounds confusing, just bear with me. So we experience an emotion first as a sensation on the body. That passes, but we still feel the emotion or we're still thinking about the emotion. And so we want to do things to try and make our body match that particular emotion. And this is where the idea, I'm just summing it up in the word of self-love, comes into play. Because we often will end up sabotaging with food when we're trying to make a particular change or do particular things for ourselves, and then we'll end up eating other things that aren't good for us according to what our thought process is. And so where do these paradigms stem from? What are some of the paradigms that we might have? 1, vegetables are good. 2, salt is bad. 3, meat is high in saturated fats and isn't bad for us or not very good for us. Anything that is yummy and delicious is bad for you. And often when we make certain choices based on those paradigms, but also mixed in with this idea of trying to get our bodies, our feelings to match our emotions in this self-sabotage cycle, then we end up making different choices, obviously, that are going to end up leading to that and end up sort of preventing ourselves from healing in a particular way that we want to be healing or want to be healed or want to move. And all of the things that we might need to base our food choices on, especially from my perspective, include the health of your gut, what that actually looks like. One moment, please. Excuse me. Excuse me. Okay, we're back. Is maybe what the body can actually digest given your particular state of enzymes or maybe a particular health condition or whatever that might be. It might be also the physical function, like if you're pregnant and your stomach is being all squished up, you may get a lot of reflux, but that's often a particular function of your physiology at that moment. Maybe seeing an osteopath or something like that could actually help to correct that in the meantime, and then help to correct it for sure after the pregnancy is over. And then sometimes it might be even a nutritional deficiency. Something like zinc can really improve our digestive juices, and we often need that to digest, especially protein. So when we put all these different things together, the idea maybe of taking pills is annoying, or it's not the best way to do it because we have to take it through food, or we think that vegetables are good, so we force them in, or we think that salad is good, so we force them in, when it's not something that either resonates with you, if it changes your bowels, if it constipates you, if it gives you diarrhea. All of those things are really big signs. If it gives you heartburn, that's a big one. Really big signs that that food for the moment for you is not good. And if everything does that, it might serve you best to have a really limited diet for a time in order to properly heal your gut and get everything back on track. But the idea isn't that you would need to be stuck on that forever. The idea that there is food that you can't eat, like if you just can't bring yourself to do something, often when that happens in my life, I feel like it's something I need to do or something that likely would benefit me, like the idea of eating liver. If it totally grosses you out, or there's just something that maybe you're instructed by a healthcare practitioner that liver might be good for you, and you're like, oh, I just can't bring myself to actually shift that and want to eat it, and the taste is gross, and it's all these thoughts around it that actually prevent us from doing that. Whereas again, if we're in a culture where the liver is sacred, it's like a special thing that you get to eat and get to consume with other people, but maybe it's just this one part of the animal that you get to enjoy, then it ends up having a whole different experience around it. And so there's no perfect diet that really will fit for everyone. And I do believe that because of our constitution, because of where your health is at the moment, because of your own preferences, likes, dislikes, and often because of that big mental piece, that part where we can learn to totally self-love and totally embrace all of the choices that we can make that will just build us up instead of perpetuating us in particular emotions or trying to keep our bodies in a particular state where we get to feel the same on the inside as we do on the outside. And so we want to be able to shift our paradigm into things that are beneficial for us as best that we can. So are there any things that you can think of in your life, or has there been a time where you've tried to shift your eating thinking that something is really beneficial for you, but it's been super hard and you haven't wanted to do it, or it's so easy to slip up and self-sabotage? What are all of those underlying things that motivate us to really stay on task, that make it easy? Like all of a sudden I can just eat all of this stuff and it's what I want, and it doesn't bother me that I can't have anything else, and I don't crave anything else. I realize that sounds totally different from what we might think about diet change, and probably isn't many people's experiences, but it certainly can happen. Tell me about all of the things that are difficult for you. Write a note, send a message. I'd love to hear from you, and maybe we can sort some of that out and actually be able to shift our paradigm into something that is actually healthy for you, which may require your own discussion with your healthcare practitioners, but something really to be able to shift so that you're just fully on board with everything that is healthy for you. Thank you so much for joining the beginning part of our Mental Fortress Mondays. And because so much of this is always rooted in how we react, how our experiences, and most importantly, the flexibility of our mind to be able to wrap our heads around the idea that we can actually do these things, and we can actually shift our paradigm and think something like vegetables are good and actually be able to change that. And again, I'm sure they're good for lots of people, and they might not be great for certain people. So tell me what's difficult for you, and I'd love to go over that with you. So get comfortable. If you'd like to join me for a mindfulness scan here, you can be seated, you can be going about your business. I always encourage people to really practice mindfulness first sitting and in a quiet space where you're not going to be disturbed, because though you can do it while you're doing other things and while you're moving around, it's a lot more difficult to do that. And so if you can practice first in a space that's a little bit more controlled, then you'll be able to do it in a much better way when you're actually engaged in other things and walking around, or there's distractions as well. So get comfortable, have a seat if you can, and just take a couple of breaths just where exactly you're at. No need to change your breath at all. And just notice it as it moves in through your nostrils and out through your nostrils. Breathing in and noticing the breath as it moves in. Maybe it's the coolness of the air. Breathing in and breathing out. And just notice when it changes. You're breathing in, and then it changes and you're breathing out. And the purpose of all of this is just to notice. Notice as you breathe in, notice as you breathe out, and notice any of the sensations that come along with that. And just stay focused on your breath, and when your mind wanders, you just bring it back. And maybe you notice your breath change a little bit throughout, and that's okay. We're just not trying to deliberately change it. Just experiencing it exactly as it is. And noticing as you breathe in and noticing as you breathe out, and just shift your attention. If it moves, just bring it back. And sometimes staying here actually can be really helpful, especially if your mind is really going. It's a lot easier to stay in this space than to just focus on your breath, because it's always with you and it's always there. It's something that's very consistent. As long as you're alive, you will be breathing. And so if your mind is really running wild, then it's easier to stay with your breath than it is sometimes to do a full body scan. And just staying focused still on your breath, moving in through your nostrils. And maybe you're noticing sensations on that area and that little triangle above your upper lip between your nostrils. You can always stay here for as long as you need. Maybe that is your 15, 20-minute mindfulness meditation, is that you just stay with your breath. And other times you might find that your mind is really distracted, and that doing the mindfulness body scan can actually be a little bit more helpful. And then sometimes if we're struggling with a particular understanding or decision or thing, maybe it's a recommendation that your healthcare practitioner gave you to not eat salad anymore. You can just settle in and pay attention to your breath for a while, and then move your attention to that thought and just notice what sensations come up in your body. Maybe it's sadness, maybe it's joy because you don't like salad, maybe you love it and you're angry that someone's telling you not to do that. Maybe it's self-doubt of thinking whether you can or cannot do that particular thing. Now, all of those are emotions that I named, and they will always come along with a physical feeling. And so your job is to notice on your body where it comes up, to notice a sensation, and to be with that particular sensation until it passes. Things will rise and they might get more intense, and they will always pass. So if there's a food that you're struggling to eat, just think about that. And just notice where in your body something comes up for you. Where is that sensation? And again, it's easier to do this if you're quiet and don't have distractions. But definitely doable in other places if you can afford the time and the space to it. And if you find it difficult, just save it for a time. You can re-listen to this, you can re-watch it. Save it for a time where you feel like it might be feasible for you to sit and engage with this activity in a quiet space. If you get really distracted, just come back to your breath and just focus on that. There may be other thoughts around, but when your focus is on your breath and you're actually paying attention to your breath, even if there's a few little background thoughts, sometimes you have enough attention that is still functional for you. And just noticing when your breath moves in and your breath moves out. Or maybe you're noticing a particular sensation from a thought around your body, sensation around your body from a thought. And depending on where you're at, sometimes it can take a few minutes to just let your nervous system settle. That was about 10 minutes of a mindfulness activity of just paying attention to our breath. And sometimes it can take that long or longer. If you're doing other mindfulness activities like walking in a forest or just settling in some way, watching the waves, I recommend doing it for at least 20 minutes. There's a time frame that takes our nervous system to just relax and settle into the calmness or to ground a little bit more. And it takes about that time, about 20 minutes at least. And if you've gone through something more stressful that day, or if there's something going on in your life, it may take even longer, or it may take many bouts of 20 minutes within a day to try and get you there. And just allow yourself that space and that time to do it, because it can change everything. It can change that level from which you're functioning, which means your interactions with other people, your performance, everything can get better when you are back in that grounded sort of space with your nervous system, which is one of the reasons we do mindfulness. Some of the reasons we do shorter mindfulness. And changing bigger things in our lives is when we do longer mindfulness. So if you had any questions from today, if you want to understand why vegetables might not be good for everyone, if you have a particular concern or want to know what foods or what are the things contributing to heartburn or anything like that, feel free to post it and I'll do my best to answer. Maybe on another mindfulness or mental fortress Mondays. Thank you so much for joining. I hope you guys have a beautiful Monday. It's going to be a hot one here in Nova Scotia, at least in the Halifax area, and have a fantastic week.